Every time you make yourself too available, you silently destroy your value. Machiavelli knew this, do you? Every time you answer instantly, you bleed respect. Think about it. The moment your phone buzzes and you rush to reply, you tell the world you have nothing better to do. And people sense it. Not consciously, maybe, but deep in their bones. Neediness has no disguise. Picture a man texting a woman he craves. He's fast, too fast. Every reply shoots out like a desperate flare in the night. And she vanishes, not because she hated him, but because she read his speed as surrender. Availability kills mystery, and without mystery, desire evaporates. Machiavelli once wrote that men must appear desirable through scarcity, for what is common loses all value. It's the same with gold, silence, even your time. The more you offer it freely, the cheaper it becomes in their eyes. And still, most people don't see it. They keep giving, hoping someone will finally treasure them. But here's the twist. Rejection isn't the greatest danger of over-availability. No, something far darker waits beneath it. A trap that doesn't just cost you respect, it costs you identity. And that's where the real descent begins. Yet the real danger hides deeper. Coming up, there's a story buried in an old Reddit thread. Maybe you've seen versions of it before. A man wrote about how his friends always ignored him. Not because he was cruel, not because he failed them, but because he was too available. He never said no. Whenever they wanted to hang out, he was there. Whenever someone needed a ride, he volunteered. If nobody else showed up, he did. He thought loyalty would buy respect. Instead, it bought invisibility. His friends laughed louder with others, saved their secrets for those who were harder to reach, and treated him as background noise. The always free guy became the least valued person in the room. It stings because you've felt it too, haven't you? The more you gave, the less they cared. Strange, isn't it? How abundant attention suffocates desire, while scarcity breathes life into it. People chase what they can't easily touch. That's why gold sits in vaults and diamonds in cases. If they were scattered on every sidewalk, no one would stop to pick them up. Your attention works the same way, and as a Sigma, you've already sensed this truth in your bones. Distance is power. You don't need to be cold, you don't need to be cruel, but you do need to resist the urge to always be there. For presence without pause becomes noise, and noise, no matter how constant, gets tuned out. Yet there's a fear gnawing at you, isn't there? The fear that if you pull away, if you give less, people will forget you, that your absence will erase you instead of elevate you. It's the paradox that keeps so many trapped, giving endlessly, hoping for scraps of respect. But what if pulling away doesn't make you forgotten? What if it makes you unforgettable? That paradox is next. In history, the most dangerous leaders weren't always the loudest. They were the ones who knew when to vanish. Take Julius Caesar. Before his rise, there were seasons when he seemed to disappear from public life, retreating into the shadows of political silence. Rivals mocked him for fading, but when he returned, every word carried weight. His absence made people whisper. His scarcity made them hungry. And when he finally stepped back into the arena, his presence felt like an event, not a routine. There's an ancient truth buried here. Value exists only when threatened by loss. Imagine if sunrise happened twice an hour. Would you still marvel at it? Or would its beauty dissolve into background? We only feel awe when we sense fragility. That's why limited editions sell out, why a farewell concert fills stadiums, why love feels sharpest on the edge of goodbye. And you, maybe you've lived the other side. You fear that if you step back, no one will chase you, that if you become scarce, they won't notice at all. It's a wound carved from years of giving too much and getting too little. That fear whispers, stay visible or vanish forever. But here's the paradox. The more you make yourself constantly visible, the more invisible you become, like wallpaper, always there, until no one truly sees it. Step back, however, and your absence suddenly speaks louder than your presence ever did. People begin to wonder. They replay your words. They crave the return. Scarcity forces them to calculate your worth, often for the first time. For Sigmas, this paradox is both curse and gift. Curse, because isolation sometimes feels like exile. Gift, because distance transforms ordinary presence into something sacred. You're not ignored. You're etched deeper by being less. So the fear of being forgotten, it's an illusion. The truth is, you're only remembered when your absence is felt, and absence can't exist without pulling away first. The question is, how do you balance it? How do you become scarce without disappearing completely? How do you make absence a weapon instead of a coffin? The answer hides in silence. Nietzsche once said, "Silence is the highest form of dignity." At first it sounds like a consolation prize for the lonely, but sit with it long enough, and you realize it's a weapon. Silence unsettles. It makes others fill in the blanks with their own fears, their own desires. The man who does not rush to speak seems heavier, harder to read, worth listening to when he finally does. Machiavelli knew this centuries earlier. He advised rulers never to reveal everything, because mystery is power. A prince who speaks too much, who exposes every thought, becomes predictable, and predictable men are disposable. But the prince who withholds, who lets silence linger, forces his court into tension. That tension turns into respect, well, even fear. Think about it. Who commands the room? Is it the chatterer, spilling every story, filling every gap with nervous words? Or is it the man who sits back, quiet, unreadable, while others scramble to interpret his stillness? One is tolerated, the other is studied, and you, the Sigma, already know the weight of silence. You've lived it, sometimes as loneliness, sometimes as armor. What you must see now is that it was never weakness. It was raw potential. Silence doesn't erase you, it sharpens you. But silence, like any blade, must be wielded with care. Too much, and they'll think you've vanished. Too little, and you'll drown in the noise. The truth is, it must be timed like a strike. There are two men. The first shows up every time his friends call. He's dependable, predictable, always one text away. People like him, but they rarely respect him. He blends into the background because his presence costs nothing. The second man. He disappears for weeks at a time. He doesn't rush to explain, doesn't scramble for approval. When he finally walks back into the room, heads turn. His absence has made him feel heavier, rarer, more intriguing. People lean in when he speaks, not because his words are better, but because they've waited to hear them. This is the rhythm most men never master. They think constant presence wins loyalty, when in truth it smothers it. Psychology has a name for this: intermittent reward. Pavlov discovered that creatures don't crave what's always available. They crave what's unpredictable. Give them a treat every time, and they grow numb. Give it randomly, and their obsession deepens. Your presence works the same way. So the question becomes, how do you craft that rhythm? As a Sigma, your timing cannot be random. It must be engineered. You decide when to step in, when to vanish, when to let silence breathe. It's not avoidance, it's strategy. Every withdrawal plants a seed of craving. Every return harvests it. Think about your own life. The moments when you pulled away, even unintentionally, didn't people suddenly reach out? Didn't they wonder where you'd gone? That's the power of rhythm. Too much presence makes you wallpaper. Controlled absence turns you into art. But here's the catch. When you withdraw, not everyone celebrates your power. Some will resent it. Some will punish you for not playing by their rules. And when they do, your next move determines everything. Because what happens when the world tries to slap you back into availability? The Machiavellian answer is shocking. There's a story whispered in workplaces everywhere. A boss calls on two employees. The first always says yes. Yes to overtime. Yes to staying late. yes to every task thrown his way. At first he's praised, but over time, the praise fades. His yes becomes expected, his effort invisible. The second employee, he says no, calmly, firmly, without apology. The boss pushes, but the man doesn't bend. And strangely enough, this man, the one who denies, is the one who gains respect. His value grows, not because he worked more, but because his boundaries made every yes rare, and therefore meaningful. Every yes cheapens the next. People instinctively devalue what comes too easily. That's why the worker who gives endlessly is forgotten, while the one who withholds strategically is remembered. It isn't cruelty, it's psychology. Humans are wired to respond to scarcity with reverence. Machiavelli wrote that rulers must balance fear and love, but if both can't be held, fear outweighs love. Scarcity is the secret bridge between the two. It creates desire through absence, but also unease. People crave your presence, yet they tread carefully when it isn't guaranteed. That tension keeps you in control. And here's the deeper truth. Human behavior isn't random. It's predictable. Reward people too much, they become entitled. Deny them entirely, they drift away. But mix the two, yes and no, presence and withdrawal, and you control the game. Like a puppeteer, you tug at the strings without ever revealing your hand. So what happens when you internalize this? When you stop seeing yourself as a victim of others' neglect, and instead, as the architect of their attention? That's not just a tactic, it's identity. But how does this reshape your identity? That's where dark transformation begins. There was once a man who walked alone through the halls of his university, not because he was shy, not because he couldn't make friends, but because he chose not to chase them. While others crowded into cliques, desperate for approval, he carved out his own space. At first they mocked him, the quiet loner, the one who never lingered in the noise. But years later, when success came, when he spoke with clarity and moved with focus, those same voices admitted they had always watched him. His distance, once seen as weakness, had made him magnetic. Respect often blooms where desperation never took root. This is the dark mirror, the desperate versus the detached. The desperate man gives, bends, clings. He exhausts himself trying to prove his worth, only to be treated as replaceable. The detached man, he offers little, but each gesture is priceless. His silence is misread as mystery, his absence mistaken for importance. People project onto him, chase him, invest in him. There's a quote, whispered in corners of power: the less you care, the more others invest. It feels unfair, but it's how the human mind works. Indifference provokes pursuit, while eagerness repels it. And here's where relief comes in. You've felt the sting of loneliness, haven't you? Nights when no one called, moments when your loyalty was ignored. But that wasn't proof of weakness. It was the seed of your strength. Isolation, reframed, is not exile. It's refinement. Every moment alone forged clarity. Every silence taught you restraint. Every rejection stripped away illusion. You weren't abandoned. You were being sharpened. This is the paradox that many never see. The very traits you cursed, the distance, the solitude, the reluctance to beg, are the ones that make you untouchable now. You're not outside the tribe. You are the rare one they orbit, even if they can't admit it. But as your silence grows into power, another danger lurks. Detachment can be mistaken for cruelty. Distance can be read as arrogance. The world doesn't forgive the cold for long. So how do you guard against being labeled cold? Next comes the balance. In the courts of Renaissance Italy, one prince was known for his severity. He kept his distance, measured his words, and ruled with an iron grip. To the nobles he was untouchable, almost frightening. But behind closed doors, with a chosen few, he showed warmth, sharing laughter, speaking gently, giving moments of rare connection. That contrast made his inner circle fiercely loyal. They didn't follow him because they had to. They followed because his warmth felt like a gift, earned through his distance. Here lies the secret. Stone-cold detachment earns respect, but it cannot win hearts. Calculated warmth, offered sparingly, creates loyalty that no fear alone can buy. People crave the moment when the guarded man lets the mask slip. A single smile from the mysterious figure feels heavier than 1,000 words from the chatterer. This is where the Sigma thrives. Your distance already sets you apart, but when you choose to show warmth, measured, deliberate, it doesn't feel casual. It feels like privilege. Your kindness lands deeper precisely because it's rare. Others sense it. If you, who belong to no one, choose to let them in, it must mean something. But there's danger here, too. Warmth without control turns to weakness. If you start giving it freely, you dilute its power. Charm can flip into neediness when it isn't rationed. So how do you wield warmth without losing command? Charm without control backfires. The real weapon is controlled access. There's a celebrity who built his empire not through constant chatter, but through silence. He never floods his fans with endless updates. Instead, once a month, sometimes less, he drops a single reply, a single comment, a single glimpse into his private world. And every time, chaos erupts. Screenshots flood the internet, forums explode, people scream, "He noticed me." Why? Because access to him is rare. And what is rare becomes priceless. This isn't luck, it's psychology. The brain is wired to release dopamine, not when rewards are predictable, but when they're scarce. That's why a gambler keeps pulling the lever. One rare win hooks harder than constant payoffs. When your time and attention come sparingly, you create the same effect. Every message, every presence, every smile becomes a hit of dopamine. People lean in, not because you gave them everything, but because you gave them almost nothing. There's an aphorism worth engraving into your mind. Scarcity is the highest form of generosity. When you flood people with yourself, you give them nothing of value. But when you ration it, when you make access feel earned, your presence transforms into treasure. And this is where the Sigma thrives. Your detachment is not emptiness, it's currency. You don't hand out access to everyone. You don't rush to reply, don't scramble to be seen. Instead, you control the gate. You choose who gets in and when. Your presence must feel like an earned reward, not a cheap commodity. Controlled access doesn't just raise your value, it reshapes relationships. Friends try harder, lovers invest deeper. Enemies tread carefully, because when you step into the room, they know it's not owed. It's given, and what's given sparingly is never taken for granted. But beware, there's always a test. People will push against your limits. They'll demand more, guilt you for holding back, accuse you of arrogance. When that happens, how you respond determines whether your scarcity becomes power or weakness. So what happens when people test your limits? The answer is ruthless. There's a story about a mid-level employee whose boss constantly pressured him to stay late. Everyone else complied, hungry for approval, terrified of rejection. But one night, when the demand came again, this man simply said, "No, my work is done." The room froze. His colleagues expected punishment. Instead, the opposite happened. He was later promoted. Why? Because he revealed the one trait leaders secretly crave: self-respect, strong enough to resist exploitation. Contrast this with the pleaser, the one who nods at every request, who sacrifices weekends, who confuses obedience with loyalty. They're not rewarded, they're consumed. Like a well that never runs dry, they're drained until nothing remains. The boundaried man, however, commands a different response. Each no sharpens his value. Every refusal becomes a demonstration of independence. He signals, I'm not desperate for your approval, which is why I deserve it. Machiavelli himself wrote, "Of cruelties well used, not mindless destruction, but precise acts of firmness that secure respect." A boundary is not violence, it is strategy. It tells the world, I am not afraid to lose you, and that courage bends others to your orbit. Think about it. When have you respected someone more? Was it when they bent over backwards to please you, or when they had the strength to refuse you? That sting of rejection creates the paradox. Anger at first, but eventually admiration, because deep down, humans crave leaders, not servants. For the isolated, ambitious man, anger has often been your burden. A lifetime of feeling overlooked, underestimated, taken for granted. But here is the dark alchemy. When wielded through boundary, anger becomes your armor. Every no is no longer a scar, it's a crown. This is why the ruthless boundary is not cruelty. It's a declaration that your time, your energy, your presence are not free commodities. They are rare metals, and only those who prove themselves worthy may touch them. But boundaries alone are not the end game, because true power is not just in saying no. It's in vanishing entirely, leaving your absence to haunt those who once assumed your presence was permanent. But boundaries alone aren't the end game. True power lies in disappearing strategically. Sometimes, the most powerful move is not what you do in front of others, but what you withhold. Take the story of a rising influencer. At the peak of their momentum, instead of flooding the feed like everyone else, they disappeared for months. No posts, no updates, just silence. The audience went wild. Speculation erupted. When they finally returned, their demand had multiplied. Their absence had transformed them from just another creator into a figure of mystery. Scarcity had created legend. History offers the same lesson. Great generals often mastered the art of vanishing. They withdrew before the decisive strike. Armies that thought they had vanished grew restless, overconfident, or paranoid. Then, out of nowhere, the counterattack came, more devastating than 1,000 frontal charges. Retreat was not wackness. It was the trap that made victory possible. Here lies the paradox. Presence gains attention, but absence magnifies it. When you're always available, you become background noise. When you vanish, you force the world to feel your absence. Absence sharpens honor. This is the unspoken law. Think of the friend you rarely see. Their presence feels more valuable when it finally comes. Think of the artist who releases an album once a decade. It becomes an event. Scarcity ignites longing. For the Sigma, vanishing is not an accident. It is a design. Retreat is not escape. It is transformation. While others equate silence with irrelevance, you wield it as a weapon. Each disappearance weaves myth around your identity. People begin to ask, where is he? What is he plotting? When will he return? Questions create intrigue, and intrigue creates power. But here is the dark truth. The art of vanishing only works because of the contrast it creates. If you vanish without ever proving your presence has value, you are forgotten. If you retreat without strength, you disappear into irrelevance. Vanishing is not about hiding, it is about timing. So the Sigma learns to retreat deliberately, to let the world grow hungry, to allow absence to sharpen honor. And when the return comes, it is not quiet, it is seismic. Identity shifts here. Your silence is no longer loneliness, it is myth-making. Your retreat is not proof of weakness, but the ritual of power. The man who disappears on his own terms becomes more than a man. He becomes a story whispered in his absence. But vanish too long, and you're forgotten. The final key is balance. Every thread we've traced returns here, to the razor's edge where power is born. You've seen why endless availability breeds contempt. You've learned how scarcity commands attention, how silence transforms into dignity, how timing turns absence into craving, how warmth disarms while boundaries defend, how vanishing sharpens honor. Each piece alone is potent, but power lies not in fragments. It lies in the balance. Because too much distance, and you become a ghost. Too much presence, and you become cheap. Too much warmth, and you invite exploitation. Too much coldness, and you stand alone in an empty hall. The eternal game is learning to bend these forces without breaking under them. This is where your past pain finally makes sense. The times you were overlooked weren't signs of weakness. They were signals of misapplied abundance. You gave too much too freely, and the world, blind to the gift, treated you as disposable. But hear this clearly: what you suffered was not proof of your insignificance. It was the seed of your power. Because the Sigma path isn't about begging for a seat at the table. It's about building a presence so magnetic that the table waits for you. Your loneliness, it was never emptiness. It was training. Every ignored message, every cold shoulder, every night where you felt unseen. That was your initiation, and now you see what others cannot. Attention is not earned by shouting. Respect is not won by servitude. Power does not flow to the loud or the eager. It flows to the man who understands rhythm, aphorism. A man valued everywhere is respected nowhere. To scatter your presence in every corner is to lose yourself entirely. To withhold it, to let others feel the ache of your absence, is to engrave yourself into memory. Think of the greatest figures history remembers. They weren't seen every day, everywhere. Their presence was rare, their words measured, their timing deliberate, their distance created demand, and their returns shaped destiny. That is the eternal balance. Not erasing yourself, not drowning yourself, but becoming a force others must orbit. And here, finally, comes the emotional release. You were never broken. You were never weak. The very solitude you cursed is the foundation of your authority. Others may chase attention like addicts, but you, by pulling back, make attention chase you. This is your transformation. From overlooked to untouchable, from disposable to indispensable, from lonely to legendary, yet one shadow remains. You've mastered the balance within yourself. But what if the entire society around you is engineered to destroy that balance? What if noise, distraction, and constant exposure aren't accidents, but weapons designed to crush Sigma silence? That is the next dark truth, and once you see it, you will never unsee it.